Hi, this is Lieutenant Colonel Tino Perez. Welcome back to episode 12 of Arguing the OE. Today I want to, for just a brief moment, not give you any specific advice, but rather raise some issues with respect to a difficult topic, and specifically here the end state. The end state is defined in doctrine. Part of our military culture, and actually part of the American approach to war, is the desire to have specific, clear end states. And this is something that we saw, for instance, with the Powell Doctrine, where, among other things, the Powell Doctrine included the notion that we should never commit forces unless we're able to commit overwhelming force, but most importantly, where we have an exit plan, where there's this end state that once it's reached, we begin to take our troops out of a given area. But this is problematic, especially given our experience with not only Vietnam, but Iraq and Afghanistan, in terms of being able, in politics, of which war is a part, to predict what an end state is going to be. So the Powell Doctrine is part of our society, also part of our military culture. We have included this notion of clear, specific end states. And we know that design, if you consult the previous lessons of or episodes of Arguing the OE, includes 4 questions. One of them is, what's going on in the environment? And the second, what do we want the environment to look like? And the commander is expected via design to visualize an end state for the operational environment. Okay, so we want clear, specific end states. But this is problematic also because we know that as soon as we're complete with a military operation or we accomplish a strategic end state, history keeps moving. So end states are not really end. And this term is probably one we should try to get rid of or replace with something else. That's what we have for now. But clear, specific end states are problematic. Dr. Jack Kemp, who teaches with me here at the U.S. Army Command General Staff College, has some interesting takes on the end state, where he's in conversation he stated that one of the things that we should do as a military professionals when we're thinking about operations is to look at the range of end states that might occur, right? And so here we come up with this cone includes a range of possible outcomes from our interventions in the operational environment. But then we envision a minimally acceptable outcome and an optimal outcome, where this is the best possible case that could arise given our operations. And what he asks us to do is to envision the set of outcomes, and this allows for a little bit more fluidity and a little bit more flexibility when we think about end states. This way of thinking about it isn't nearly as clear and specific, but it's more of a range of possible outcomes. This is useful. He also includes the notion that we should think about this in terms of time. So, say in 6 months we want to achieve this range of outcomes. Perhaps in a year we want to achieve this range. In 3 years we want to be somewhere in this range, and so forth. I think gathering a staff and a commander, unified action partners, to think about the end state in these terms is very useful. But we get into problems, right? There's a study in the journal International Security by Aaron Rapport, and it's entitled The Long and Short of It. And what he does is he applies psychological theories to the question of planning in 2002 and 2003 for the Iraq campaign. And he asks, why did this happen? And one of the theories he comes up with is the following. When we're talking about end states, we can just differentiate between near-term and long-term end states. When we as human beings, this is part of our hardwiring, our psychological hardwiring according to these theories, when we as human beings are thinking about near-term end states or outcomes, the criteria that we use are associated with feasibility. So if I want to take my family on vacation next week in the near term, there are a whole bunch of nuts and bolts things that we as a family need to get together and plan in order to achieve that outcome of going on vacation. Okay? Feasibility, nuts and bolts. If I want to conduct a raid or I want to run a range, everything will be focused on feasibility. Who's going to be doing the detailed work? Okay? However, what the report finds, when we deal with long-term end states and outcomes, the human tendency, because of our psychological hardwiring, it's not certain, but the tendency is that we're not going to evaluate a long-term end states or outcomes in terms of feasibility. We're going to evaluate them in terms of desirability. And so this is just one of the psychological flaws that human persons have. These are the same kind of flaws that people like Dan Kahneman and Dan Ariely, who both integrate both psychology and economics to explain human behavior. This is the kind of finding that they're talking about, psychological causal logic. Okay? If this is true, how do we expect to approach long-term objectives like a stable, secure Iraq, or a stable, secure Afghanistan, a stable, secure Libya, a stable, secure Syria? It becomes very difficult, simply because we're humans, to think about those end states in terms of feasibility, and we err by thinking in terms of desirability. Okay. So this is a problem, and the principal problem is because war is a subset of politics, right? And in politics, unpredictability is the name of the game. It is difficult in politics, of which war is a part, to think through how our strategies, right, how our campaign plans, how our operations orders, and how our mission statements are actually all going to generate an end state. In their own politics, unpredictability, fog and friction, or the coin of the realm. So how do we tackle all this? One of the famous political theorists, she fled the Nazi regime and came to the United States. Her name was Hannah Arendt. And she had an interesting distinction insofar as she distinguished between two things. One are actions you take in order to accomplish something. Okay? And then another set of actions we take for the sake of. Now the details of this distinction really get to the heart of many conceptual issues that we don't need to tackle here. But it's useful to at least look at these two ways of looking at human intentional action. Some things we do in order to. For example, I might go into my garage with lumber and a set of tools in order to create a chair. I have a design in my head, and I'm going to realize the design in physical reality by building the chair. But one of the things Arendt says is politics, and in her technical sense, action, aren't amenable to in-order thinking. It's very difficult in politics to apply your vision of what the world should look like in the same way that you can go into your garage and manipulate lumber and tools in order to get a chair. Politics for Arendt was done for the sake of. And it's usually some broad principle. Okay? And the archetypal example that she uses is the American founding. Where people in concert take action for the sake of some common, albeit loose principle. For example, liberty, or freedom from the British Empire. No one who is participating in that for the sake of type action knows what the outcome is going to be, but they're all working towards it. And this, for her, was what politics and action consisted of. Okay. When we are trying to create a reality in Iraq or Afghanistan that consists of a stable and secure Iraq, a stable and secure Afghanistan, it's very difficult to engineer an end state. Really what we're trying to do is for the sake of. But if this is true, then how do we wrestle with the desire to create clear and specific end states? And it's a very difficult tension. It's one that I hope that you, with your fellow military professionals, with Unified Action Partners, and for those of you here at Fort Leavenworth, discuss with your students about how we should think best about the end state. Thank you very much.